Okay, so getting put on a performance improvement plan at work, I mean, it's
Yeah.
stressful for anybody.
Absolutely.
And, especially for someone on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
Um, and especially if you haven't, told anyone at work about that.
Right.
So today we're going to do a deep dive into a guide
Okay.
for autistic adults facing this situation. And it's from Cheap ABA.
It's a great resource.
So,
And, this is a really unique challenge, I think.
right.
And they wisely kind of break this up into two, different approaches, depending on whether you've told people at work that you're autistic or not.
Right. And that is a huge decision
Absolutely.
in and of itself.
Big one.
So let's talk about the rights first.
Okay.
Yep. Because I think that's something that everyone needs to know.
For sure.
Regardless of whether you've disclosed or not.
Yeah.
So for our listener who has disclosed their autism at work, the guide reminds us about the power of the ADA.
Oh, the ADA is so important in these situations. And I think it's important to remember that it protects you from discrimination based on your disability.
Yeah.
And that definitely includes autism.
So this isn't just a, feel-good law.
Right.
Like this actually has...
It has teeth. Yeah.
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 So basically what this means is you're entitled to what are called reasonable accommodations.
Yes. And those accommodations can be more than people realize.
It's not just like,
right.
Can I have a bigger desk?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it can be way more than that.
Much more than that.
So we're talking things like flexible work hours.
Yes.
If you struggle with sensory overload.
Oh, yeah.
During like peak commuting times.
Oh, sure.
Or, maybe even a quieter workspace. If like the open office plan is killing you.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Especially now with so many open office plans. And, even think about the training aspect. If the PIP mentions, specific skills that you need to work on.
Right.
Accommodations could even include like extra training.
Yeah.
That's tailored to your learning style.
Right.
To help you bridge those gaps.
So it's really about leveling the playing field.
Absolutely.
You're not,
not special treatment.
Special treatment, right?
Yeah, just what you need to succeed.
Exactly. And the guide wisely points out that, instead of looking at this PIP as like a punishment,
right.
This is actually a chance to be proactive.
I love that.
Right?
Yeah, it's a shift in perspective.
Right.
And I think it can be really helpful.
Yeah, so that meeting that you might have with your supervisor or with HR, it shouldn't be like...
It doesn't have to be a scary thing.
The interrogation.
Yeah.
Right?
It can be an opportunity.
It's an opportunity to clarify expectations.
To show that you're serious about improving.
Right.
But that you need the support to do that.
With the right support.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this is where that written action plan becomes so important.
I love written action plans.
So the guide stresses this. It's not just like,
vague promises.
Vague promises, airy-fairy,
Yeah.
We're going to work on this.
It's got to be concrete.
It needs to be written down.
Yeah.
Concrete goals.
Yeah.
Specific deadlines.
Yeah. Who's responsible for what?
And who's responsible for what?
Yeah.
Like really spelling it out.
Like a contract almost.
Yeah.
Not just a casual conversation.
Right. And that way things are less likely to,
get lost or misinterpreted.
Get lost in translation or
right, exactly.
Misinterpreted later on.
Yeah.
Right.
For everybody's benefit.
Exactly. And, this is a good time to remind our listener.
Yes.
That, even if you have disclosed your autism at work, you don't have to go through this alone.
This is so important.
Right.
You are not alone.
There may be, other autistic colleagues or mentors or even support groups who've been through something similar.
And they can share their experience.
Right. And that shared experience can be so valuable.
Absolutely.
Not just for like practical tips, but, for the emotional support too.
Just knowing you're not alone can make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the trickier situation.
Okay.
Where our listener hasn't disclosed their autism at work.
Right.
So the guide starts by encouraging some honest self-assessment.
I think that's such a good place to start.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember this isn't about, blaming your autism for the issues that the PIP brought up.
Right.
It's about, recognizing
how it might affect you.
Yes.
Your work experience and figuring out what kind of support would actually help you thrive.
Exactly.
It's about understanding yourself.
Yes.
Not about making excuses.
I love that.
Right.
Understanding yourself, not making excuses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So now this leads us to the big question. Do you disclose?
Right.
Now because of this PIP.
Big decision.
Right. And that's a deeply personal decision.
Absolutely.
And the guide rightfully doesn't push one way or the other.
No, they don't. And there are...
Because there are pros and cons to consider.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's say our listener chooses to disclose during this whole process.
Okay.
There's a really crucial point that the guide makes.
Okay, what's that?
So drum roll, please.
Okay.
The meeting shouldn't be about autism in general.
Oh, that's a good point. Right.
Not Autism 101.
You're not giving your boss Autism 101.
Right.
Right.
It should be about how it affects the job.
It should focus specifically on how your autism affects your ability to perform
this specific job.
This particular job, right? And what accommodations
Right.
help you be successful.
Exactly.
So it's about connecting the dots for your employer.
Yes.
Here's how my autism shows up at work.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what would help me do my best.
Yeah. I love that.
Okay, so connecting the dots.
What if our listener decides to stay undisclosed?
Okay.
Does that mean skipping the meeting altogether?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
That meeting is still so important.
Okay, so even without disclosing,
yes,
that meeting with your supervisor or HR is still crucial.
It is.
Okay, it's all about showing that you are taking this PIP seriously.
Yes.
And that you are willing to improve.
Yes. Show that you're willing to put in the work.
But you might have to be a little bit more strategic.
Yeah.
About the kinds of support that you request.
That's a good point.
Right.
Yeah, because you're not giving them all of the information.
Right.
So you have to kind of be a little bit more
subtle,
strategic about it. Yeah,
right.
I like that word.
Yeah.
So the guide actually gives a really good example.
Oh, perfect.
They say, frame those requests in a way that would benefit any employee in that role.
Okay.
Not just someone who's autistic.
I like that.
So, for example, let's say the PIP says you need to improve your time management skills.
Okay.
And you know that that's partly because you struggle with transitions and unexpected interruptions, which a lot of autistic people do.
Extremely common.
Yeah. So instead of saying like, oh, I need a strict schedule because I can't handle change, you could say something like, having a clear daily plan with dedicated blocks of time would really help me stay on track and minimize distractions, which would benefit anyone in this role.
Right. It's finding that common ground.
Exactly.
And making your needs relatable.
Yes.
To the workplace culture.
I love that.
Great.
Finding that common ground.
Okay.
So important.
So let's be realistic.
Okay.
Staying undisclosed can add like a whole other layer of complexity for this whole PIP process.
Yeah, because you're not giving them all the information.
Right.
So that's why having a really strong support system outside of work is so important.
You mean support outside of work?
Yeah, like therapists.
Okay.
Autism organizations, online communities even.
Okay.
Places where you can really process how you're feeling about this.
Right.
Get support strategized.
Yeah.
Without the pressure of the workplace environment.
Right, because they might not know at work.
Exactly.
That you're autistic.
And they might not understand the challenges that you're facing.
Okay, so regardless of whether you've disclosed or not, there's one piece of advice that cheap ABA gives that applies across the board.
I love this.
Documentation.
Yes.
Documentation.
This is so important.
Documentation.
Keep copies of everything.
Everything.
The PIP itself notes from meetings accommodation requests.
It's like having receipts.
Yes.
For every step that you take.
Exactly. And I always tell people, send an email.
Oh, that's good.
To yourself, summarizing the meeting.
Oh, that's smart.
And CC your personal email address. So that you have it time-stamped.
That's so smart.
That's your receipt.
I love that.
Because you can't argue with a timestamp.
Right. It protects you if things go sideways.
Exactly.
And it provides evidence.
Yes.
If you need to advocate for yourself.
I love it.
Further down the line.
So smart.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
It's clear that navigating a PIP as an autistic person comes with its own set of challenges.
Absolutely.
But I think what we're also seeing here is that it presents kind of a unique opportunity.
It is.
Right.
It's an opportunity to advocate for yourself.
Yes.
And potentially create a more supportive work environment.
And that's what we're going to be exploring further.
Yes.
When we come back for part 2.
Looking forward to it.
So welcome back to our deep dive into navigating a PIP as an autistic person.
Glad to be back.
Now, before we jumped into, the disclosing or not disclosing scenarios, the cheap ABA guide had some really great universal advice that I think is worth highlighting.
Yeah, for sure.
And one thing that really struck me was the importance of really understanding the expectations that are outlined in the PIP.
It sounds so obvious,
Right.
but when you're in it,
Right. You're stressed.
it's hard. You're overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can miss those nuances
Yeah, totally.
of what they're asking of you.
Yeah. So it's not enough to just know that, like, okay, I need to improve.
Right.
Right.
You need to know what to improve.
Yeah, you got to break it down.
Like, what does that actually look like?
Yeah, like what are the concrete skills or behaviors
Exactly.
that they're looking for? And like, what does success actually look like
What are the deliverables?
in your specific role?
Yes.
Right. And like, don't be afraid to get granular.
Right.
The guide even suggests creating like a checklist or a timeline
I love checklists and timelines.
to track your progress.
Visuals are so helpful.
Right. So it's a tangible way to see like how far you've come.
Yeah, and stay motivated.
To stay motivated.
Check things off as you go. I love that idea. It's like turning a big, scary PIP into a series of manageable mini quests.
Yes. I love that analogy.
Right.
It makes it less overwhelming.
Right, and this actually ties back to that golden rule we talked about earlier.
Documentation.
Documentation is key.
Yeah.
Right, so keeping those clear records of your efforts, of your communication with your supervisor, of any progress that you make.
And it protects you if things go south.
It does.
Yeah.
And it also shows them
Right.
that you're taking it seriously
That you're serious.
and that you're actively working towards those goals.
It shows initiative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of taking it seriously,
Okay.
it's important to remember that like a PIP is often like a formal step
Right. It's a process.
in a company's process,
Yeah.
right, for addressing these performance issues,
It's a system.
right? So there's like a whole system in place,
Yeah.
and understanding like the rules of the game
Yeah, I know the rules.
can make a big difference
Absolutely.
in how well you navigate it.
It's like knowing the rules of chess.
Yes, exactly. So you want to be familiar with your company's policies
Mm-hmm.
and procedures related to PIPs,
Read the handbook.
right? Like, what are the timelines involved?
Exactly. Are there forms?
Are there specific forms that you need to fill out?
Yes. And know what to expect.
It's all about knowing what to expect,
Yes.
right? And, you know, even though it might seem intimidating,
Right.
the guide actually encourages people to ask questions.
Yes.
So if there's something in the PIP that's unclear,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're not sure about the expectations,
Don't be afraid to ask.
just ask for clarification.
Yeah, it's so much better to ask up front
Right, than to make assumptions
than to try to guess.
and potentially miss the mark.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, so all of this like practical advice is great,
Yeah.
but let's be real.
Gosh.
Getting a PIP
Mm-hmm.
can be like an emotional roller coaster,
It is. Yeah.
right? Like feelings of inadequacy,
Yeah.
self-doubt, anxiety.
Yeah. For
These
sure.
are all very valid reactions,
Absolutely.
especially for autistic individuals who might already be
Yeah.
facing certain workplace challenges.
Yeah. So that's where having that support outside of work is so important.
Right, and the guide emphasizes that.
Yes. Therapists, autism organizations, even online communities.
Yeah, just having a space
The space where you can
to like vent,
process your emotion.
process those emotions,
Yeah.
get validation
Yeah. Val.
from people who understand.
Normalize what you're going through.
Right, and that can make a
Thank you.
world of difference.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes just knowing you're not alone in this
Mm-hmm.
is enough to like help you keep going.
Yeah.
And it's not just about like the emotional support.
Right.
It's also about like getting practical advice
Yes.
and coaching strategies.
Coping strategies are so important,
Right.
especially in these situations.
And don't forget self-care.
Oh, self-care is crucial.
Right. It's so
Do
easy
you neglect it?
to neglect your well-being
Yeah.
when you're stressed.
Yeah. For sure.
But like getting enough sleep,
Yes.
eating healthy,
Yeah. Eating well.
doing things you enjoy.
So important.
These can have such a huge impact
They really do.
on your ability to cope.
Absolutely.
It's like putting on your own oxygen mask first.
Love that.
Right.
Yes. Take care of yourself first.
You can't help anyone else
Exactly.
if you're running on empty.
Yeah, pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
So true.
Shoo. And you know what else the guide mentioned?
What's that?
Humor.
Oh, I love that.
Finding ways to laugh,
Yes.
even at the absurdity of the situation.
Sometimes you just gotta laugh.
Lighten the load
Yeah.
and help you gain some perspective.
Absolutely.
I love that they included that.
Me too.
It's a good reminder that, like, even in tough situations,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay
It's okay.
to find those moments of levity.
Yes. Find the joy.
Right. Okay, so let's dive into some, like, specific strategies
Okay.
that can be helpful during this whole PIP process.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to, like, communication. Okay. And interactions with your supervisor.
Important.
So one that really stood out to me
Yeah.
was the idea of practicing active listening
Oh, active listening is so important,
during those meetings.
especially when you're getting feedback.
Right. So it's really about like hearing what your supervisor is saying,
Mm.
paying attention to their nonverbal cues,
Yes.
and really like demonstrating
Yeah, show them
that you're engaged
you're listening.
in the conversation.
Yeah.
Because it can be easy to get defensive
It can be.
when you're receiving criticism.
Oh, for sure.
But active listening can help you stay calm.
Yeah.
Process that information objectively.
Don't take it personally.
Right.
Try to stay objective.
And avoid those misunderstandings.
Yes.
It's like taking a mental step back
Yeah, detach a little bit.
and really trying to see things from their perspective.
Put yourself in their shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side,
Okay.
like clear and concise communication is key. When you're expressing your thoughts and your needs,
say what you need to say.
Right.
Artfully.
you want to avoid using jargon or like technical terms.
Right. Or going off on tangents.
It might be confusing.
Yeah.
And just be direct about what kind of support
Yeah.
you need to succeed.
Exactly.
And this is where written communication can be a lifesaver,
oh, I love written communication.
especially for autistic individuals
Yes.
who might find like
Sometimes those verbal interactions
verbal interactions more challenging.
can be tricky.
Right, so emails, memos, even just like jotting down notes
I love no.
before a meeting
Yes.
can really help you organize your thoughts,
Stay on track.
stay on track, and make sure that your message
Yeah.
is conveyed accurately.
Because you can get flustered in the moment.
Right. It's like having a script
Yes, it's like a script.
to follow,
Yeah. And that can be really helpful.
which can be really helpful
Yeah.
in those high-pressure situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So helpful.
Another tip I thought was great
Okay, what's that?
was to like request feedback regularly.
Oh, I love that.
Right. So don't wait until like your next formal performance review
Right.
to find out how you're doing.
Don't be afraid to ask how you're doing.
Check in with your supervisor periodically.
Yes.
Ask for their input
Be proactive.
and show that you're like actively working
Yes.
towards improvement.
That you're putting in the effort.
And that actually helps build like a more collaborative relationship
It does.
with your supervisor,
Yeah,
which can benefit you throughout this whole process.
absolutely.
Okay. So now remember
Yes.
that even with like the best strategies
Right.
and the best support in the world,
Mm-hmm.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
That is so true.
It's unlikely that you're going to completely transform your performance overnight,
It takes time.
right? So the guide
Yeah.
emphasizes the importance of setting like realistic expectations
Yeah. Don't set yourself up for failure.
and celebrating those small wins along the way.
Yes, the small wins are important.
So acknowledge the progress you're making
Mm-hmm.
and just focus on gradual,
Yeah.
sustainable improvement,
Little by little.
right? And this is where self-compassion comes in.
Self-compassion is so important.
You're right. Be kind to yourself.
Yes.
Recognize that like
Everyone makes mistakes.
making mistakes
Yeah.
is part of the learning process.
It's how we learn.
And don't let those setbacks derail your efforts.
Yeah, you're going to have setbacks,
Right.
but don't let them stop you.
It's about having that growth mindset,
Yes.
believing that you can improve,
You can.
and remembering that this PIP is just a chapter
Yeah.
in your career journey.
It's not the whole book.
It's not the whole story.
Love that.
Right. Okay. So we're going to come back after a quick break
Okay.
and wrap up this deep dive
Sounds good.
and explore those long-term implications
Yes.
of navigating a PIP
Important.
as an autistic individual.
We'll leave everyone with some empowering takeaways
We will.
to help them move forward.
Okay. So welcome back to our deep dive.
Mm.
You know, we've talked about rights and accommodations and communication strategies,
Mm-hmm.
but like what happens after the PIP?
Right.
Whether you like quote unquote succeed or not?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah, because the cheap ABA guide
Yeah.
doesn't just stop at those immediate steps.
Right.
They really encourage you to think long term
Okay.
about your work environment as a whole.
So it makes you think, even if you've technically like
Yeah.
met the goals of the PIP, is this
Yeah.
really a sustainable place for you?
Exactly. And it's like that saying,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes you win the battle but lose the war.
Oh, yeah.
Like a PIP can be a wake-up call.
Even if it seemingly worked out.
Exactly. And it brings up some tough questions.
Okay. Like what?
Like, is this a workplace where I can actually thrive long term,
Like,
even with accommodations?
mm-hmm.
Are my skills and talents being valued?
Right.
You know, are they being utilized effectively? Does the company culture really align with my needs as an autistic person?
And those are questions I think everyone should ask themselves
Yeah.
at some point in their career.
At some point, yeah.
But a PIP can really like bring it to the forefront.
Yeah, it can really make you think about these things.
And what's so fascinating here is that sometimes a PIP, even if you've objectively succeeded,
Right.
can be a sign that it's time to explore other options. You mean like looking for a different job?
Yeah, it's a possibility worth considering.
Okay.
You know, there are workplaces out there that are more intentionally autism-friendly,
Okay.
that embrace neurodiversity as a strength,
I love that.
and that have cultures that really support autistic employees.
And luckily, there are resources out there
Yeah,
to help people find those companies.
there are.
So like organizations dedicated to promoting neurodiversity
Yes.
in the workplace.
Job boards.
Job boards specifically for autistic individuals.
Even online communities.
Right.
Where you can connect with others who have found success in similar fields.
Yeah. Right. So it's about recognizing that you have choices.
Yes.
A PIP doesn't have to define your career trajectory.
Exactly.
It can be a turning point,
It can be a catalyst for change.
a chance to like step back and make conscious decisions about what you want
What you really want, yeah.
from your work life.
Absolutely.
That's so empowering.
It is, yeah.
It reminds us that we're not just like passive bystanders
Right.
in our own careers.
We have agency.
We have the agency to advocate for our needs,
Yes.
to seek out support,
To make choices.
and create a path that aligns with our authentic selves.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
And remember, knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
The more you understand about your rights,
Yes.
your options,
Yeah.
the resources available to you,
Mm-hmm.
the better equipped you'll be
To make those decisions.
to navigate these situations,
Yes.
PIP or otherwise.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about individual knowledge. It's about the power of community.
Oh, the community's so important.
Right. Connecting with other autistic individuals,
Yes.
whether it's online or in person,
Doesn't matter how.
can provide such a sense of belonging,
Absolutely.
a shared understanding,
Yes.
a wealth of practical advice and emotional support.
You're not alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to our listener out there who might be facing a PIP right now,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully this deep dive has provided you with some valuable insights,
Some helpful tips.
some helpful tips,
Some hope.
and maybe even a renewed sense of hope.
Absolutely.
Remember, you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You have the strength and the resilience
Yes, you do.
to navigate this challenge
You got
and come out stronger on the other side.
I believe in you.
And as always, we encourage you to check out Cheap ABA
A resource.
for more resources and information on supporting autistic individuals in the workplace and beyond.
They have so much good stuff on their website.
Their website is truly a treasure trove of knowledge
It's
and a great starting point
yes,
for your journey of self-advocacy
and empowerment.
and empowerment.
Love that.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And we'll be back next week with
Yeah.
a whole new topic
I'm looking forward to it.
and a fresh batch of sources to explore together.
See you then.
Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep embracing your unique neurodiversity.